Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen Steve.
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership. Hello, Christeen. How are you today?
I am good. It's a Monday. Interestingly enough, we had about 15 inches of snow this weekend.
Nice.
So, lots of snow work, shoveling and things like that, but mostly my husband did that. So kind of him.
And if you're listening to this in July, you're like, snow? Well, we're recording this in February 2024.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is the season.
And it's the middle of winter for most landscapers. And well, for all landscapers, it's the middle of winter. But if you're in the Northeast, you're waiting for snow. If you're out in the middle of the country, you've had some snow. And if you're down in that South region, you're only a few weeks away from the start of spring and everything blooming and growing and busy again. And then the cash starts flowing. In today's episode, we're going to be exploring cash flow management for small businesses in the lawn care and landscape industry, but also for most trade industries.
Yeah, and this seems to be a common, problem, the topics that we're going to be talking today. It is very relevant to, any industry in the trade. They all struggle with cash flow. There's some pain points. So hopefully we can uncover some effective strategies today and give you some insight on, how do you get control of your cash flow? What are your options?
And it's interesting because I've been talking to people the last week and a half who are in Florida, in Alabama, in Texas, and it slows down there, not as much as it does in the Northeast, but they're kind of shocked by it. They're kind of shocked at how slow it got in January this year because it was just cold enough to kind of keep everyone inside, but, still warm enough to work. And in the Northeast, we know it's too cold most of the time to do too much outside unless it's snow. So, we're going to talk about the importance of cash flow management and cash flow awareness because regardless of where you are in the industry, where you live, it's going to come up even if you're in the warm parts of the country for lawn and landscape companies. So effective cash flow management is essential for the survival and growth of small businesses, especially in the trade industries. Our industries also involve dealing with physical inventory, supply chain management, labor management, fluctuating demand, which can all have significant impact on our cash flow. We're going to be exploring the strategies for managing cash flow today that are tailored to the unique challenges of our industry and trade industries.
Yeah. So I want to start with understanding cash flow. And this is something, before we can dive into strategies, we need to understand, well, what is cash flow? And I think, interestingly enough, we come up with ideas on what cash flow is that we might have heard from a friend or made up a definition, which is I'm famous for, where I'm like, ooh, that sounds like it might be this, instead of really looking into what is it? So it's, crucial to understand what cash flow really is. And cash flow refers to the movement of funds into and out of your business. A positive cash flow means that more money is coming into the business than it's going out, and which is, of course, vital for any business. And then also the negative cash flow, on the other hand, it can lead to financial difficulties. So that means that you have, more demand for cash going out than the cash coming into your business.
And cash flow is kind of a fancy word of saying, do I have enough money, right, to cover my bills and what's going on with my business right now? And one of the challenges in the lawn care and landscape industry, or most small businesses, even the pizza guy last week was telling me how bad January is for his business, and it starts picking up more toward the end of February. But what happens is we have the same kind of expenses outside of some payroll and materials all year round, like the equipment payment is every month, the rent, the mortgage, it's every month, the light, the heat, all that stuff, it's every month. Our overhead staff, it's every month. But our cash doesn't come in at equal amounts every single month, right? We have these big like spring flush, and then they can be, depending on where you are, the summer can be really good. In the fall, it slows down a little bit. Then it picks up in the fall, and then it slows down again in November and December. So even though our expenses are constant, the cash flow is not. So it's very important to understand where those pain pinches are, why they occur, and how to manage around those.
Yeah, and I want to dive in today to some challenges that are very common, and hopefully this helps some of the people listening to this podcast feel that you're not alone. Everybody has these challenges around cash flow in a business, and really what we want to do as we grow and we understand our business more is understand the challenges and what are some of the solutions that can help us with these challenges. So one of them is inconsistent sales. And this is the demand for services or products. These can be seasonal and also impacted by economic factors. Something that Steve and I, have heard from several business owners of late is that, like social media marketing isn't working. Campaign marketings aren't working. Whatever marketing that they're doing to bring in new customers or even close customers or new lead generation, it isn't for some reason as effective of late, and something is changing. So this can also be, an impact on your sales being consistent, year to year or season to season, something's going on. Typically what we find is, especially like after the holidays, people don't want to spend money. They're buckling down a little bit more because of holiday spend. A lot of times too, we find that people go on vacation depending on where they live. If they live in kind of like the northern or the Midwest, they'll go someplace sunny. So they're really not around to interact with any of your marketing or your sales techniques. So those can be some things that impact your sales consistency as well.
And, in the Northeast, if you're a snowplow contractor, that can be a huge seasonal challenge, because you have all this money you put in your trucks, your loaders, you're buying salt materials, all this cash outflow. And if you're per storm or per push and you don't get snow, you have all those expenses and you don't have any revenue. That's why a lot of people, to help with that cash flow, they'll do seasonal contracts, but it also helps the clients who are doing seasonal, because now they know what their bills are going to be, as opposed to getting these huge bills if it snows, and then no bills if it doesn't snow. But that cash flow, almost every business, regardless of what type of business they're in, even big hospitals, they have seasonal cash flow crunches or seasonal cash flow challenges. So it's definitely in the trade industries, but it's also in the restaurant industry. It's also in the medical field, and in almost all industries. I know Frito-Lay, they make, potato chips. They have a huge downturn in their business right after the holidays until spring picks up and people start going outside again.
Right. Yeah. Or all of those diets that they decide to go on after the new year.
Right. No one's
Who's
buying
going to be
chips.
eating, potato chips. And I've even worked with clients in the past to where they have a season to where their snow season is their busiest time of year. And they don't really have that much lawn application or landscape income coming in. It's really their snow income that makes most of their income during the year. So you could have a flip-flop business model to where either your snow season makes most of the revenue, or maybe your lawn application and landscape makes most of the revenue, depending on your business model. We also have, clients in the trade industry to where there's kind of this lull, which is interesting. It's kind of the end of spring. And then as they go into summer, to where people really aren't spending money. And this also kind of revolves around when kids are ending school and people go on their family vacations. So there's kind of this 3 to 4 month period to where sales slow down. And if you look at the time frame and what they do, people are spending money somewhere else. So, they're getting ready for school to end, they're getting ready for vacation, they're spending money, on something that isn't really a pain point right now. So that can also be, a seasonal thing. So being more aware of what are the seasonal things that can happen, the variables that happen that can impact your sales and your revenue based on your business model is a really good place to start.
And I always recommend marking that down in your calendar or in a repeatable calendar so you're not surprised or shocked by it. You want to see where the trends are because, pretty much it's the same kind of rinse and repeat. We found that in landscape installation, if you don't have August sold by the end of June, it's almost impossible to sell in August because it's so hot and people are not thinking about plantings, they're not thinking about patios. So we needed to have, August sold by June. And if we didn't, we ended up selling more maintenance work in August, pruning, edging, mulching, kind of enhancements, but not landscaping if we didn't sell it. So, we also know when we're selling lawn care applications, pretty much when that spigot shuts off that third week in May, the new sales have stopped. The lawns look good. They've been mowed. The weeds have been mowed off and the lawn, the calls and sales just kind of stop coming in. So doing any type of advertising or marketing in late May and early June typically is just a waste of money. It's not going to increase your sales and your revenue. Next, we're talking about supply chain delays can hurt your cash flow.
Yeah. And I know that we experienced a lot of this with businesses during COVID. And then even after COVID, with the supply chains were heavily impacted. And then other silly little things happening around that time. Like you remember, some ship got stuck in a canal, right? And suddenly like all of our supply chains had issues. And we're like, what do you mean? What does it have to do with this ship? And so things that may not even be in our day-to-day life or we're aware of until it happens on what is impacting our supply chains. So if we have delays in receiving materials, these can lead to missed sales opportunities or unhappy customers. And one of the things that we have found in working with our clients is the communication factor, right? If you are having delays in a supply chain, just explaining and those expectations and setting those expectations, saying, hey, we can do this. This is the delay it's going to cause. We'll do our best to, maybe get the job done by here, or, we'll look for some other opportunities. So you don't exactly lose that sale or have unhappy customers. Communicating expectations around supply chain delays.
The other thing that happened during COVID with supply chain delays were they quoted us a price at X. And when they finally delivered it, it was X plus plus. So we had been quoting, customers pricing, and then it comes in and now it's XX plus. So that was a little bit of an issue. We had to really watch that. That kind of pinched into some gross profit margin on some jobs, and because that was not a typical thing where they said it was one price and then it showed up and it's another price. And they're like, well, if you don't want it, we have 5 people behind you that will take it at this. So definitely, that supply chain issue definitely mattered. I know in that we're all watching that ship that's down in the canal getting stuck, and everyone's like, well, can't they just move it? And it was, I don't know how long it was there for, but long enough to create enough of an issue and concern for the whole world, I guess.
Yeah. And I also recall that there were major snowstorms that hit around the same time. In like Texas, we had a big one. And so
Right.
some surrounding areas where, and some of you probably remember this, the, landscape supplies and a lot of where they would get all the flowers and trees and bushes and various things, they were completely wiped out because all of the supplies were damaged. So they were trying to figure out like, where do we get it from now? And, finding a different supplier. And when you build a long-term relationship with the supplier, it puts you at the top of the list So when you have to go somewhere else, that can cause some problems and additional delays because there's going to be other people in front of you that already have that relationship with that supplier.
And another thing that can really affect cash flow is payment terms. Customers may have extended payment terms that delay cash inflows. And I was just in one of the chat rooms on Facebook, and that was one of these big concerns, that people were like still chasing money. We're in February. They were still chasing money for work they had done in October, November, and December. And, now is when they really need the money because they haven't been working or they've been working very little. So these delays these were not like planned on. They didn't actually intentionally give these customers extended terms. The customers took it. And it's typically, we found that the same customers do this every year. So, right, we need to have systems in place to collect the money. We need to be a little more aggressive sometimes in collecting money. And sometimes you can be aggressive, but nice, right? Just a phone call, go offer to pick checks up. I worked with a landscaper a few years ago, and he's like, well, I don't want it to make it look like I need the money that bad. And I was just like, I want every customer to know I need the money that bad. Like I'm doing this and then I need to get paid, just like in our agreements. Like I do need the money because I have responsibilities, and that's just the game of life, right? I mean, we all have responsibilities and we need that money. So the person would borrow money from his family or his his dad and mom. And that's how he would fund that difference instead of going to get the money. But I would recommend that you have a system in place that nicely reminds people that they owe you the money. And but go drive and pick money up. I've gone to many homes on Sunday morning when people were 90 days, and almost everyone's home on a Sunday morning, and just very friendly, knock on the door and ask for payment. Because if you're in that situation, if you've got a wife, a couple kids, and there's no mommy and daddy to help you out, you got to go get it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know if somebody knocked on my door on a Sunday morning, I would be thinking of everything I could possibly do to make sure that they had all future payments in hand. So nobody was knocking on my door on a Sunday morning.
Yes, that has to go pretty far. That's a 90-day, multiple phone calls, checks in the mail type of thing. But yes, make sure that we have our payment terms. It was the number one topic on this that day on that Facebook page because people were still chasing payments. Some guys were chasing. They had snow in December and they hadn't been paid yet, and they were trying to debate, do I go back because the people told me they were going to pay it and they hadn't paid it. And these are people of means. We're usually working for people who have a level of income that is sufficient to pay us. So, but making sure that you have systems, you follow up, don't be afraid to ask for the money. You did the work and go after it. It's really part of business.
Yeah. And one of the other challenges too is labor shortage. And this has been kind of a topic, I feel like, ongoing for several years now. And our qualified labor has been impacted by a shrinking workforce population. And between lower birth rates and retirement, our workforce will actually shrink by 2.1%, which is an estimated 7 million additional workers will slow down or actually stop working. So it's not something that's going to really go away, is, labor shortages. So we need to start thinking about what are some solutions and strategies to get in front of or to solve these shortages, which means a lot of the time in the trade industry, you're going to have to start doing something different than you have been doing.
And this is a big, conversation. If you're into pumpkin planning, if you're into really niching your business and focusing on your talent and resources, and we do what we do is crush cringe analysis, figuring out what type of clients we'd like to work with and who we should be working with, and if we're already challenged to do everything we have with the clients that the clients we have, with the team that we have. Why are we working for people that just make us cringe? They pay late, they pay slow, they complain, they don't give referrals. Every time the phone rings and it's that person, you're like, oh, you're cringe. And not because, it's the one time. This person's always making you cringe. So it's a trend, not an event. The other thing is, technology, routing, management of the scheduling and routing, having crews really optimize their equipment. I have conversations all the time where they want the mowing crew to do the weeding. The challenge with having the mowing crew doing the bed weed control or bed weeding is now you have all those lawnmowers, all those blades sitting on a trailer while they're pulling weeds. Typically, they're not the most detailed people all the time. Your mowing crew in the beds, they're great at like mowing straight lines, cleaning the sidewalks off, doing a great job trimming and edging. But the bed weed control is not their niche, and it's better to find somebody who that's their thing. And keep those mowing crews mowing, because finding drivers in some markets is tough. We want the driver driving to the next lawn. We don't want them in a bed pulling a weed. So just being efficient and, with what you do have on your workforce. But there's technologies that are coming up in the next, 10 years. I think the industry is going to look a little different. It's going to be more, a little more tech friendly. Even my crews, and a lot of these guys are not tech people. They're definitely doing things that are adding to like tracking, time tracking, using the punching in and out of the clocks, and coming up with ways of saving time on jobs. So labor shortage is definitely going to continue. We're going to be short 2.1%, 7 million people. Wow.
Yeah.
And all industries are fighting for everybody now. So it's not just like landscape and lawn care guys are fighting for painters and tree guys and restaurant and tire changers and
Yeah. That's when I discovered that, because I was really digging into, when it comes to cash flow, like what are some of these things that can, and when I hit on that labor shortage one, I read it twice. And, and then I looked for different resources, and they were all pretty much saying the same thing of, how much of an impact is this going to have, and how will our labor force continue to shrink? So I think this will really help with expectations. I'm hoping for business owners out there, adjust your expectations around your labor and start kind of thinking outside the box, and what can you do, and maybe what can you automate. So this next thing we're going to jump into is strategies for cash flow management. And I want to unpack some of these. I think that they can be insightful for business owners that are trying to come up with different ideas, or maybe even things that they have not implemented in their business to manage their cash flow, more effectively moving forward.
So one of the things, before I forget, is like with the labor, they have these mini skid steers now. That replaces a whole person on a crew. I just did that modeling with someone last week about how that would replace one whole person. So definitely look at some of that equipment. The cash flow management, we're talking about accurate cash flow forecasting. And I think that was really kind of what I was saying about knowing when your cash flow or your sales slow down, because there's a bit of a lag, right? The sales and cash flow, the sales is a leading indicator. So if we have lots of sales calls and we know that we sell 50% of all the estimates we go on, and our average job is $5,000, we can pretty much forecast out based on our sales flow what our cash flow is going to look like. And you want to do this, you can track this over the years and you can see the trends, so you know what is coming ahead.
Right. So when we're doing, the accurate cash flow forecasting one, predicting incoming cash. So what does that mean? It means that you're going to estimate the cash that you expect to receive, like Steve said, based on past trends and current contracts. I also love to use the Profit First calculator. So if you have download that tool, this is going to help you understand not only, what is our incoming cash going to be like once you get kind of a number, then it's also going to help you understand your forecasting your outgoing cash. It's a very simple and quick way, if you've got Profit First implemented in your company, to predict how much are we going to have to manage that outgoing cash without actually creating a full budget. So it's going to tell you kind of, how much are you going to have to spend. So you want to plan for upcoming expenses. This is going to include your supplier payments, your wages. So what are you paying, your team to produce, and any other overhead. So it could be rent, utilities, equipment, other things like that, and getting an idea of, well, what do we spend? What are we going to have? Is it going to be enough to cover it? And it will quickly give you an idea, okay, does something need to change? Where can we cut costs? And then adjust for seasonality. So we kind of talked about this earlier, is there's going to be different seasons for every business model, and really understanding what is your season and what are some of the small changes that you can make in your business to adjust for that seasonality. We have set up seasonal funds using the Profit First methods. So that way, when they have a down season or a slow season, they're saving money during that peak season to, flow back that cash flow back into the business to account for those seasonal fluctuations. So you don't feel that pinch and you can plan for it.
Yeah, the Profit First system, it really helps, especially with that flex season account. Since we implemented it, it really helps so that you can use that account and you're not dipping into all your other accounts when you have this seasonal flexibility issues with and it's usually a very short period of time. It's usually about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks in 2 quarters a year. For us, it's quarter 4. And then again, in the very beginning part of Q2 is that seasonal, because we're starting up again and there's lots of expenses and lots of costs. And we're just starting to regenerate that level of income. And then in Q4, right toward the end, the cash flow is kind of slow, but those expenses are constant. So that flex season helps with those adjustments. Another way to kind of manage that is to tighten up the controls, right? Establish clear communication with payment terms and penalties for late payments with clients. Prompt invoicing. One of the things that helps is if we get our invoicing out really quickly and let them know, hey, at the end of the job, we're going to walk around, make sure everything's the way you like it, and we're going to get payment, either electronically, or you're going to cut a check, ACH, whatever it is. And the thing is, like, I've had this conversation with a lot of different landscapers about payment. And, you can't walk out of Walmart without paying. You can't walk out of Walmart and say, you know what, let me use this TV or this tractor. If I like it, send me a bill in 30 days. I'll wait 30 days and I might send that on time. You don't walk out of Walmart. You don't walk out of Target without paying. So just and that's the deal though. That's the contract they set up ahead of time, right? Clients know that. So we really need to be clear on how we're going to get paid, because that is one of the biggest challenges with cash flow. It's not getting paid promptly. So making sure that we set up those prompt invoice systems, and we're also, if someone's past due, that we have a system that contacts them. And if it's not your thing to contact people that are past due, find somebody in your company that is their thing,
right.
Because it's such an important part of running a business.
Yeah, always make sure that somebody owns that job of communicating and connecting with people that are past due. It's typically not the owner. If you don't have a choice as the owner, maybe come up with 3 simple steps that you can follow to where you can be comfortable with communicating. And if you don't want to do that, I would highly suggest that you put your payment terms very clear in advance on collecting those, so you don't have to. And that was something I did early on when it was just the team of me, and I didn't want to call somebody and say, hey, you owe us money. I set it up to where we had an automatic withdrawal on their account for their bill. and also had them sign an agreement that said, hey, you're either going to pay in advance or you're going to be pay, with an automatic withdrawal when the terms are due. And that really tightened up our controls. Prepayments are fantastic. So a lot of lawn care companies have prepayments. So you just want to make sure, do not spend that money until you deliver it. Same with deposits on landscape jobs. So making sure that, you get a portion up front, but make sure you save that until you're actually delivering on the job, because that can mess with your cash flow too. So that's another control that you can tighten up.
Core Growth Strategies provides business growth management solutions through cloud accounting, bookkeeping, and strategic business consulting programs. Our team works with small businesses in lawn care and landscape and trade industries throughout the U.S. We increase our clients' business acumen by creating business performance transparency through financials and strategic advisement based on industry best practices and benchmarks. Our experienced team provides support, guidance, and coaching, thereby allowing our clients to connect with viable data and discover their own solutions. Core Growth Strategies programs and services are designed to get your business from where it is now to where you have always dreamed it to be. Visit us today at coregrowthstrategies.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't miss our exclusive limited time podcast special. Just mention promo code GPA Pro to any member of our team during your complimentary consultation, or enter the promo code on our site when you sign up for one of our online programs. That's promo code GPA Pro.
Yes, advance payments are a wonderful thing, especially in the lawn application business, because what would happen is we've been doing it for years. And the reason was because you'd go to treat, 5 lawns on this one street, but 2 of the lawns hadn't paid for the last application. So you don't treat those 2 lawns. Then those people come home and see their neighbors were treated. Now they want to get treated. And they call up, hey, how come I wasn't treated? And you're like, well, you're past due. So they say, okay, we'll send a payment in, or, we'll just give me a credit card. Oh, we'll send a check in. So one person does give a credit card. So you go treat that one. And then the other person waits another 2 to 3 weeks before sending the check in. So you go back and do the other one. So now you're on that same street, 3 times as opposed to once. So the advance payments takes all of that out, and it takes all of the collections out. It takes all of the chasing out. It's so much easier for the advance payment system to do that. Like Christine said, that's where, we implemented Profit First. So you don't spend that money, because until you do the job, it's not your money. So making sure that that's allocated properly at the right time is a huge part of managing that, because you can get yourself in really big trouble, getting this money and it's sitting in, especially if you're not doing Profit First. Now you have all this money in one account and it looks like you're rich. It feels like you're rich, but really it's not your money, because you still have to pay the labor. You have to pay the materials. You have to pay all the costs that support doing those applications or installations for landscapes.
Yeah. And you end up in a worse situation than you were when you were collecting money, because you spent all the money and you have no money to collect. So making sure you have a nice tight control on any of those prepayments is vital. But just remember, if you're controlling not spending the money, you do not have to control collecting the money. So I think it's a nice trade-off. The next strategy is inventory management. And this is one that I've been helping clients navigate for years. I typically find that there is no inventory system set up in their business. They're reactively buying inventory as they need it and missing out on opportunities because they don't have an inventory management system, and will even be overspending because they don't know what they do have. So you really want to keep inventory levels aligned with the demand that you have on the services to avoid tying up any cash on unsold materials. So you never want, too many, too much. You, of course, want to buy in bulk, but have a good estimation of what you do need to buy based off of what you need to deliver. So that's where you keep those in place. And then we always suggest, negotiating with suppliers. So having that good relationship with the long-term relationship with your suppliers, so you can improve the payment terms, you can, get discounts for early payments, you can have kind of like that heads up when a price is going to change on something, that your business typically uses. And another thing that I like with inventory, it's called just in time. So adopting a just in time inventory system to reduce holding the costs that can, increase your cash flow. So that just in time is okay. So we will reorder on this, or if we know that there's a delay, we're going to have to reorder at this point. So getting more in tune with what you do need, how long it takes to deliver what you need. And that really helps having a good relationship with a supplier.
I used to get whole trucks of bluestone shipped in from Pennsylvania, and it would be like $12,000 for a truck of bluestone. This was years ago, but it was convenient, but it was expensive because I would sell the bluestone over the season, installing, patios and sidewalks. But it was like having $12,000 of cash out in my back of my shop, sitting out there in the weather. And but it was just easier to do that. But it was definitely a little risky. And you got to hope you sell it. And sometimes it's weird in how one year everybody wants bluestone, and the next year nobody wants bluestone. Everybody wants Allegro Techo block pavers. Then next year nobody wants Allegro. They want Blue 60. And so trying to I've bought tractor trailer loads of arborvitaes because we've had the best arborvitae season ever. Then the next year I can't give those trees away. So, I'll learn to be very careful. And we went definitely more into the just in time method, even if we had to pay more, because there was a lot of handling and watering and caring and all this stuff for these, especially for the plants. The stone, not so much. You could sit out there, but it was a chunk of change to have sitting in the back of your shop.
And I like that point too, that you just made, Steve, with that just in time inventory, is weighing the risk and the obligation and the investment on the other side of once you have it, if you have to care and maintain, or even loss, like how much are you going to lose if you order, too much, or you have too much on hand. So that's a really good point to where this could be another bleed in expenses, or profit because of the maintenance and the loss on the other side.
Absolutely. Learn that the hard way.
As we do with most things in business.
Yes, it seemed like a great idea, buying truckloads of plants and truckloads of stone, but it's an expensive way to go. And it's funny, if you buy it and you have it when nobody else has it, you look like a genius and you can charge more. But when you buy a lot of it and nobody wants it, then you don't feel like so much like a genius.
Yeah. So that goes right into our next strategy, which is managing expenses. And this is, I feel like an Achilles heel for most businesses, right? To where it's like, we just go. We're very unaware of what we spend, and what is involved in that spend. And one of the things that we do with Profit First is, and it's part of our, Profit First webinar, when we're doing our office hour coaching, or, in our peer groups, we're talking about, pinch points, right, with cash flow. And we always suggest to review your expenses regularly and cut back on non-essential spending. And you may even want somebody else to review these expenses and ask questions, because as business owners, we have a tendency to justify why we're spending something. And a conversation is helpful to really get down to like, well, is this really necessary? And I've done this, playing the devil's advocate many times with business owners and looking at their expenses. And sometimes they don't even know what they're spending. They're like, I didn't realize I was spending that much on office supplies, or why is that necessary? And then they got a purchase order system in place for office supplies, and they saved tens of thousands of dollars. So, that's a really good strategy, reviewing your expenses. The other one is deferred payments. So when possible, if you can defer payments for longer expenses and spread it out over time, or make installment payments, that can be helpful to your cash flow as well. You just want to make sure that you're not paying more, than maybe you would on credit card interest or something like that, because sometimes the payments can go up when you do 10 installments, let's say on insurance or something like that, versus just one installment. So being aware and weighing out the cost, versus the savings when it comes to that.
And the office expenses, if you're not, and I'm not running the office, I'm not working in the office, like I'm working in my office, but not the whole office. It can get out of control. And even with paper, they just really need to keep an eye on it. When we order paper, we're still sending out paper contracts. We still send out envelopes, and we still bill people, through the mail, who want to be billed through the mail. So we're buying our paper by the pallet of, or our paper order comes in, it's 3 pallets worth of paper. So, and then you put it away and you're like, oh, we already had 20 boxes of that same envelope. Or, we already had 3, cases of that paper. So being careful of making sure the people who use it are also checking the inventory before they reorder, instead of just reordering it. I've done it with chemicals. I'm like, well, I always order this amount. And then I go in, I'm like, oh, I had like 50 gallons of that left over, so don't just order, don't fall into the trap of ordering exactly what you ordered last year, because we're using less and less paper every year. So, we need to keep an eye on that. And also, like, we had a situation on a very high end piece of paper, because it was custom to go with our CRM, and the top line printed in reverse. So they switched all the paper in the printer, and then it printed correctly the next paper. So 1,000 pieces of paper were printed in the wrong direction. And because the other piece of paper that printed wrong was on top. So now they stand there and watch, to make sure that it's going the right direction. And it was because of one setting. When they did the settings in the computer, it was one box was checked or something like that. So it was a rare thing, but that was an expensive little mistake. So look at your costs, and belts and all your stuff for your equipment too, not overbuying things. I mean, we bought 4 cases of engine flush one year somehow, and I think they thought they were ordering 4 cases of oil. So an engine flush is, you have to change the oil, put new oil in with engine flush, run it for a certain amount of time, flush it all out, and then redo all the oil. So it's 2 oil changes to do this. But so we have probably 2 cases of engine flush for the last 20 years left over. But then the vendor would not take it back. So he's not a vendor anymore.
Yeah.
He lost a customer, but it was a mistake. Somebody thought they were ordering one thing, they ordered another thing. So make sure that everyone's kind of paying attention to that. Deferred payments are nice. Like, we put our big early order in for our fertilizer and our chemicals, and we get deferred payments until we start using the products, which is going to be March, April, May. And typically they all want to be paid off by July 1st. So the deferred payments definitely are nice. Implementing profit first system is a huge part of this whole managing expenses in a business. And what's interesting, and I hear this almost every day, I don't have enough money to do profit first. And the thing was, if you did profit first, you would have enough money because you would see your money, you would see where it is and how it flows in and out of your business. But it's just so crippling. It's almost like, oh my gosh, if I define where all my money should be, I don't have enough. And if you don't have enough, then that's another question. Why is there not enough? Are we spending too much in one Are our allocations off? Are we not charging enough? But until we actually break everything out where it's supposed to be, we don't know. We're just guessing.
Yeah, and that's the thing I love about the profit first system and the advanced one that was created for the book, the scalable growth business model, is it really gives you the guidelines that you need on healthy spending habits in a business per their revenue level. So you're aware on what should I be spending in what category based on the revenue level. And I get it. Like, it can be extremely scary to identify, create that transparency and identify where the gaps are, where you are overspending. That means change, and change is not something that everybody welcomes. That means controls, and controls is something that they feel they don't have time for. So I always, kind of look at it like, do you really have time to have cash flow issues and the stress that goes with it on not having enough money to manage your business? Or do you want to make time to implement profit first and get a system in there to where you won't be spending all that time trying to manage, the expenses and the cash flow crunch and the stress and the sleepless nights and things like that. So it's choosing one. It's choosing to get your business into a healthy place and identify your guidelines, or it's choosing to be stressed and overwhelmed and be in the dark with all these things. So there's some choices. They're not easy choices until you really start making them, because it does take work. It's not going to happen for you.
And I always think back to this: choose your hard, right? Going to work every day, it's hard. Being broke is hard. Choose your hard.
Yeah.
Right. So profit first, it's simple, but it's not easy. Wondering where all your money's going to go, where it's going to come from, and how it moves through your business is not easy, right? So profit first can be implementing it and running it and getting used to it, and everything could be hard. But spending the rest of your business career wondering where and how your money's going to work and how it's going to flow and can you grow and all that other stuff, that's hard too. So we get to choose our heart. I will tell you, there's no way I could have grown my business like I did if I was not doing profit first, because the percentages just grew as the revenue grew. I didn't have to refigure out anything. So the money was always there when we needed it. And there's a huge sense of confidence that comes across as a leader when you know the money's always going to be there. You can hire better people because you know you can pay them. You can pay all your vendors on time because you know where the money's going to be. You have more confidence when you're selling services to your clients because you know the money is always going to be there to pay the people, the vendors, and you're going to be able to show up on time because everything else is on time. So it definitely, and also gave my team this huge sense of confidence because my office manager, my bookkeeper, they always knew where the money was.
Yeah. And I would have to say that financial planning and strategy and review and budgeting takes a small portion of the time with having that system implemented from experience. And I have a background in accounting. So I tell you, anybody that can cut corners when it comes to budgeting, forecasting, all those things, I'm all in, because it can take an extremely long time to do that. And knowing your numbers, using the profit first system, it just keeps you in your lane. It makes it easy once you have it in place.
Way easy. Yep. All right. And then, so if we're into, cash flow management and we want to access funding, right? So we need to establish a line of credit because you may need a line of credit at some point in your career to purchase equipment, cover cash shortages. You may need a line of credit. So get a line of credit established. There's also government grants and loans. You could explore that, specifically designed to support small businesses in the trade industries and SBA loans. So we want to make sure it's kind of like dig the well before you're thirsty concept. We want to make sure we have access to capital before we need it. We don't want to be in the desperation mode and then start searching for capital.
Yeah, and there's lots of opportunities around government grants and loans, and looking out there, just, spending some time to research it. They don't only have it at a federal level, they also have it at a state level. And you might even be able to find some things in your community. You'd be really surprised. Typically, a local chamber of commerce will have some resources for you. So, if you are in a community to where they're looking at, supporting the economy and what else do they need, there might be some grants out there that are, with the county, with the state, right in your little town or city, that could be sitting there that aren't, being applied for. So definitely, look into those and take some time.
And they're not always easy to fill out. So sometimes there might be somebody that has experience with that at your local chamber that can help you with that. We filled out a government loan and gave them the 3 years of taxes and all this stuff. And they were like, we got disqualified because they couldn't prove that we were a business. We didn't have enough identifying documents. I'm like, 3 years of tax returns. And when I called up, I was like, they're like, oh yeah, somebody must have put you in the wrong file or something like that. And so they got it figured out. But, sometimes you have to be patient with these people and just realize that they are overwhelmed and understaffed too. So
Yes.
Sometimes they will move files to the wrong reply. It was very interesting. I laughed about it because I didn't know, we were just, again, I was digging my well before we were thirsty. I didn't need the money for, a very particular thing, but I just want to make sure I had it available if I did. And just remember that sometimes the government funding can be a little tricky with dealing with some of the staffing who are overwhelmed and shorthanded. And another thing, like SBA loans, we had a client who the SBA bank was kind of making him jump through this hoop and that hoop and all these other little tap dance moves. And I advised him just to go to a different bank and ask them for the loan, same loan. And he actually got better terms. He got lower interest rate. They, didn't ask him to, put every single piece of property he owned up as collateral. And so just, you don't have to be at the whim of all of these people. So shop your shopping for your capital around and let people know that you're shopping it, because sometimes if they think that people are in desperate modes, they're not so, I don't know,
Accommodate. That accommodation level definitely changes. So, having those relationships with the bank, a community, really tapping into your local business support. There are people that they may know that can support you. So that's some good insight. One of the next strategies that we're going to dive into here, which of course is another one of my favorites, is technology. So I love technology to do the work for me. I love it to streamline, remove, the possibility of human error, because we have enough opportunities to make mistakes, so that technology is very helpful. So utilizing an accounting software to track cash flow in real time and make informed financial decisions. So that could really help you a lot with managing your expenses, managing your cash, setting up automatic payments with clients, setting up an invoicing system to send out to the customers that you're servicing, on an instant basis. The other thing is mobile payment solutions. So there's lots of opportunity out there these days with mobile payment solutions to where, you can receive payments on the go, which is really nice, or receive a deposit, just tap your card here or fill out this information, send them a link, something like that. So there's lots of those solutions right at the taking that have some good payment terms and even, merchant fees that are attached to them, probably less than what you're paying for right now. You'd be surprised. And then the other thing that I would highly suggest is an industry management software. And this is typically an all-in-one software that will improve the overall efficiency, communication, transparency around customer service and scheduling, estimating, invoice. So they're out there that can do it all for you. Several of them that I know is one is, Steve, I know you guys use Real Green. So that's one that supports the industry. Field Routes is another one that is specific for the lawn and landscape. Service Titan is another one.
Service Autopilot,
Yep.
Jobber. Yep.
There's so many great ones out there. And I think they caught on to the opportunities finally, and they're really building out the systems to be more intuitive, easier to use. The different workflows that they have in there are collaborating on their own, so you don't have to set them up. So you don't have to be a software programmer these days to actually use this software like it was, 5-10 years ago, very kind of clunky and disconnected. So if you don't have one of those, do your research, come up with 3 that you are really interested in, and talk to somebody else who's using them, one of the 3, and make a decision and get it implemented. So those can really help you save money, make more profit, streamline your operations, and all of that can heavily impact your cash flow in a positive way.
Next is we want to review and monitor our weekly cash flow, right? So weekly cash flow reviews, conduct weekly reviews of your cash flow to identify potential issues early on. We don't want to wait until we are in trouble, until we kind of know what's going on. You can do that. Typically, we do it at the beginning of the week, and we'll do it at the end of the week. So we'll know, what does Monday look like? What does Friday look like? And then, which sounds like, well, Friday and Monday, the next day after Friday is Monday for business anyways, but it just makes us like, okay, did all the boxes get checked? Did everything that was supposed to get done? And then on Monday, okay, this is what's supposed to happen, right? This is where we are in the month in our cash flow, because you'll see when you start doing it weekly, you'll see how it works in your month. And then when you're doing it monthly, you'll see how it works in your quarter. And when you're doing it by the quarter, you'll see how the quarters work in your year.
Yeah. Yep. Step by step. So, start small and go big.
And next is key performance indicators. So these are KPIs, key performance indicators, and you want to make sure we're tracking those, such as daily sales, outstanding inventory or inventory turnover, what's not selling. It's interesting. We go to these, you just think about a restaurant you go to that has like an 8-page menu, right? And if you ask them what's the best seller, they'll say all of it. But if they have a tracking system, they can tell you, well, these 8 items, right, make up 80% of our sales. And it's very interesting. We went to a restaurant in town for years, and, you could just tell that they were just working hard and doing the best they could. They brought one of their kids into the business, and I saw the iPads and the tracking, and, they were sharing with me the data that they got after about 3 or 4 months, and they whopped off 1/3 of their menu. They just cut it off. Nobody was buying it. And they thought they had to sell that to be more full service restaurant, but people were going to that restaurant because they offered a niche product, a niche menu. So it was very interesting to see the changes. So in our own business, maybe we don't need to keep everything in our business if very, very few people are buying that. And that will help with cash flow.
Yeah. And this is an ongoing process, right? Managing your cash flow. It's not something that is one and done. Unfortunately, it does require attention. It also requires some proactive measures, like Steve shared earlier, how's our sales funnel doing? How are we closing, right? That closing ratio is then going to affect your income, right? So there's a domino effect that's happening here. The cash flow is just another piece of the puzzle, just like your leads, just like your closing rate with your sales. So, it's part of this process. And any one of these strategies that you implement, they're going to help you maintain a healthy cash flow. Don't think that you can get them all done at one time. This is going to be a process. So, you're going to maybe choose one and then choose another one and another one, and it's just raising your awareness around this. And every step of the way, there's going to be an improvement.
It definitely takes time, and be honest with yourself. Like, oh, there's nothing wrong if you have the same cash flow problems at the same times of every year. Just be honest. All right, this is when my cash flow issue is. This is how much the issue is. And then you can start preparing it from there. It's hard to sell your way out of cash flow issues. It's hard to sell your way through cash flow issues. Really, preparation is the way to have that. And when selling is good and the cash is coming in, use your profit first system to make sure that money is going to be there when the sales slow down. So what happens is people desperately will try to go out and sell at the slowest times of the year. And, it's tough because people aren't buying. So we can't really sell our way out of these kind of, even the restaurants. When I was talking to this pizza guy, and they were like one of the best places in town, January is just awful for him. Even if he heavily discounts, people just aren't coming out. It's after the holidays. It's cold. It's not the money. It's people are just not. That's not the psychology at that time of the year. So he recognizes that. He prepares for it. And we should be prepared because we want to identify when those are going to happen for us. And it makes everything a lot easier.
Yeah. So I'm going to include in our show notes a download for everybody who's listening, and it is an effective cash flow checklist. So it will put these topics right in front of you if it's something that you want to work on getting implemented, these changes in your business. So you can find the download in the show notes for you to download this checklist, and hopefully it will help you kind of get some of these strategies in place in your business.
Awesome. That would be so helpful to many people. So get that checklist, use it, share it with someone in your office, or share it with someone that helps you with your books or your business or your sales, and start working on a checklist with somebody else. It's always better. Teams are always better. That way people can show up with different strengths. And hey, thanks for listening to our podcast today. We hope you found this discussion insightful and useful. And the knowledge about cash flow is continuous. Everyone's always learning. We're always learning ways to improve it and discover better ways to manage it. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. If you enjoy this podcast, share it with a friend. Tell a friend about this. We get really good positive feedback about the podcast, and we'd love for it to grow and be more impactful in our industry. So share it with other people, and we appreciate that you're doing that. So we look forward to you joining us on the next podcast. Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
the show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.